12, it became very apparent that Mum was not well. And Mum was desperately concerned about patient's future as the firstborn. So she found there was a compassion project nearby, and she registered patients into the compassion project. Well, sadly, shortly after that, her mother passed as well, was taken with HIV/AIDS. Her two younger siblings had already died from AIDS. So that just left Patience and her brother. And they went to live with an aunt who they loved dearly and who loved them dearly. But sadly, her aunt also had HIV/AIDS, and they weren't there that long before Auntie passed away as well. Auntie had 7 children that had died from HIV/AIDS. That's the start of her life, if you like, from a happy life, and it's all changed. She then goes to live with her uncle and auntie, and auntie was not a blood relative, and effectively what that meant was Patience became a house girl, a house slave. She was 12 years old, and she was working till around 1 o'clock in the morning, doing chores in the house, and she had to be up around about 4 o'clock in the morning to prepare the breakfast for the family, to start the housework again, but wasn't allowed to eat with the family. It was an abusive relationship that she was in. There's no other way of explaining it. The good thing was the compassion project that she was in noticed. She was able to tell them what was happening. And so they then sent her away to boarding school, because she was actually, to be fair, she wasn't doing very well at school. Her reports were, in every subject, were poor. And comments like, Patience needs to work harder, needs to do better. So she went to this boarding school that helped her. And tell me what life was like then.
Initially, I was struggling because of the trauma I was going through at home. So I wasn't really concentrating in class. But then when I went to boarding school, my grades improved greatly. And I started being the best in some of the subjects, in some of the classes.
So you were sponsored at this time. Who was your sponsor? And tell us about her.
My sponsors, her name is Diane Schilling from Arizona.
And she was effectively funding your schooling through Compassion.
Yes, she supported me all through till I got my bachelor's.
So the sponsor helped her all the way through university. But it wasn't just financial support, was it?
No.
Tell me about the letters.
The letters, she regularly wrote to me, and I always looked forward to receiving a letter from Diane, because each letter was unique to me. Each letter was filled with so much love. Each letter was encouraging me, and each letter gave me a push to live on.
And how many letters do you think you received from her over the years?
I think there are over 100, and I still keep them.
You still keep them?
Yes.
Do you still read them?
Yes. I do read them.
So these letters are so valuable to Patience. They're giving her the encouragement that she needs. So, as you heard, she got a bachelor's, which is really good. Your first degree was in?
It was a bachelor's in social work and social administration. And then later, I was able to support myself to do a master's in public health and leadership.
Wow. Now, during this time, Patience would get small amounts of money to cover her travel to and from the boarding school. And so she used to walk and put the money in her pocket so that you could help your brother through college.
Yeah, through school, and also get him some clothes.
And what did your brother become?
He became a teacher. He was actually the best in the country. He became a teacher.
So this little girl, just through the love of her sponsor, has now started to help her own brother. And you think everything would go well from there, wouldn't you? But sadly, having teaching certificates are valuable, and some people broke into his home to steal his teaching certificates, and during that, they also murdered him. So now Patience she's lost her parents. She's been orphaned once, effectively orphaned twice when her auntie died. She had one brother, and he's now been taken. It's not fair, is it? Life's not fair. What is the enemy trying to do here? He is trying to crush this lady. But you graduated, praise God, and tell us about your first job then after graduating.
I then worked with Compassion Uganda, first as a child development officer in charge of sponsorship. And then I think someone was watching how hard I was working. And then after 1 year, I was promoted to a project director. And I went to head a children's center.
So you're looking after about 280 children.
Yes.
That's quite a responsibility, looking after 280 children. And that's what Patience was doing. But when you were about 4, you told your dad that you wanted to be something else, didn't you?
Yes.
What did you tell him?
I told Daddy that when I was 4 years, I told Daddy that I wanted to be a soldier.
But you're now working in a compassion project.
Yes.
So what happened?
I worked with the Compassion Project for about 2.5 years, and then I went for military training.
And you became a soldier.
Yes.
And we often think, oh, you become a soldier. That's, I have a son who was in the army for 11 years, so I know it's not. Don't spend all. A lot of it is just sitting around. But you actually got transferred to Iraq.
Yes, but that time when I told Daddy that I wanted to become a soldier, my mom gave me a slap for that.
So you got a slap from your mum, but your mum's no longer with you. So you now find yourself in Iraq.
Yes.
As a soldier, the way you do. Tell me about some of the awards you won while you were in Iraq.
One of them was being the best sniper.
I warned the previous service that actually she has a gun in her bag. So if we ask you to sponsor a child and you say no, she'll have you in her. You'll be in the crosshairs of her. She'll have you. Wow! So you're the best sniper.
Yes.
Wow! How good is that? So she serves in the Ugandan army. And then you leave the Ugandan army, and when you're back home, you get a phone call from one of the generals.
Yes.
Tell us about that and what happened.
He calls me one morning and says, "What are you doing?" I say, "No, I'm just at home." Said, "How can a person like you be in the community just at home?" Said, "He come to my office." So when I went to his office, he told me, "Can you help me to fight corruption?" Very many things ran in my mind. And I was like, okay, how? I thought, of course, as a person with military background, I thought he probably wanted me to go shoot all the corrupt guys. And then I also thought, I think this guy is putting me online to die early. But then he told me to go home and think about what I can do. So thereafter, we started an organization called Volunteers Anti-Corruption Campaign Africa. And Africa is deliberate because we envision that we shall spread to the rest of the African countries that are equally affected by corruption.
Amen. Because from memory, a few years ago, I read that Uganda was, I think, quite low on the corruption scale. It was sort of like the ninth most corrupt country in the world, but it is improving. Praise God, which is fantastic. So tell me what the anti-corruption volunteers do, and how many of them there are.
While many other organizations back home do advocacy, especially those that are in anti-corruption activism, for us, we attach action to advocacy, because I personally think that advocacy without action is like dead faith. So we, among the activities we do is that we train people from all walks of life, people with all levels of education, right from community to up there. And so far we have 2,700 volunteers spread across the country.
And those 2,000 volunteers who are trained, and some of them will be shopkeepers, they will be they'll just be farming their own small piece of land, subsistence farmers, and they will know there's corruption going on in their community from local officials, and they then get this information and they pass it up the line and further up the organization that the patients is involved in leading. They have lawyers and accountants, people who can then go in and start doing things. And you've seen some amazing things happen, haven't you?
Yes.
Tell us about some of them.
Some of them is that from our work, of course, we have had quite many government officers being arrested, imprisoned, and made to refund what they stole. And then I was like, okay, it just can't be refunded, because I think this money was doing some business somewhere, so you refund with interest. And that has been done. Then as a result of our action, of our activism, government started a unit called Asset Recovery Unit, where assets of the corrupt are attached to recover what has been stolen from the taxpayer.
Wow. So isn't this great? So this young lady is fearsome. You know, if you are corrupt in her country and she finds out about you, then no, seriously, she's going for you. Her organization are going for you, and they're gonna tackle this together. And not only are you going to be found out, the law is going to come against you, and you're going to have to pay back with interest. Do you think Deanne Schilling is proud of sponsoring patients? Isn't that wonderful? Now, this, you can imagine in a corrupt country that doing something like this is not necessarily the safest role anyone could have. And you're telling me that 13 of your volunteers have been murdered?
Yes, they have 13 of them. And we actually expected that, because it's not an easy venture that we are in. But one of the most heart-wrenching was, we have this guy that I always deploy on radio. We have radio programs on 3 channels, thrice once a week. And one of these guys I used to love deploying on radio was poisoned 4 times, but he didn't die. Now, when he didn't die, the enemy decided to attack his family. You can imagine people who have nothing to do with what we are doing. So in the same night, they attacked his sister who lives in Kampala and the other sister who lives in Kasese, quite far away from Kampala. The one who lives in Kampala was beaten to pulp and they thought she was dead and they left. In fact, she spent 5 months in hospital. The one who lives in Kasese was poisoned with her 4 children and 3 of the children died. It was so heartbreaking. It's at that time I sat and thought, what do we do? Do we take a step back? What do we do? But something within me said, the blood of these children will not go in vain. And it was like a renewal of our determination to fight corruption more. Yeah.
Wow. Patience, thank you so much for that.
They probably would love to know why I am quite fierce in the anti-corruption activism. Is because of the devastation that AIDS caused me and my family. I look at corruption the same way because it does affect people indiscriminately, just like AIDS does. And I look at corruption as, I equate it to AIDS, not the acquired immune deficiency syndrome, but rather acquired integrity deficiency.